No, any information which the Torah gives us, it's only shares this with us because there's something to learn from it. Whether it's within a halacha context, within a behavioral context, whatever it may be. His father sends a message to him. Your father are coming towards you with your wife and your two children. So Pasuk Zayin, Pasuk tells us, "V'yetze Moshe likras mechosno." Moshe responds. He goes out towards his father-in-law. V'yishtachu v'yishaklo. He bows and he kisses him. V'yishalu ish l'reu l'shalom. Each one asks how each one is faring. V'yivo, and they come into the tent. So the famous Chazal here, Rashi cites the Chazal, the Eitzim Moshe, Kovet Godel Diskab Yisro Shor. Yisro had a great honor at that day. What was accorded to him? Came Yotze Moshe, Yotzu Aaron Nod Vaviu. If Moshe goes out, Aaron, his brother, follows, Nod Vaviu, Umihu Shiros Elu, Yotzin, Yotza. And if anybody saw them going out, so who went out to greet Yisro? The whole clan Yisro. We're talking about minimally 600,000 people went out to read Yisro, plus the others who were less than 20 years old. Okay, leave that just for now. Vayishtach vayishaklo, he bowed and he kissed him. Any yudei mi yishtach me. It's unclear who bowed to. Did Moshe bow to Yisro, or did Yisro bow to Moshe? Shuome ish l're'eu. When it says the ish bowed to his fellow, mi hikreu kol ish, who's called ish? Ze Moshe. Shenemar ish Moshe. Ish Moshe. So ish is Moshe there. Moshe bowed to his father-in-law. It's interesting. The pasuk was citing that Moshe is referred to ish. It's regarding that after Miriam had spoken Lashon Hara about Moshe, she became a leper. So the Torah tells us, "Dish Moshe Olav Mikol Adam." He's the most humble man who ever walked the face of the earth. Over there, it's to point out that even though Moshe wasn't in any way offended whatsoever, nevertheless, Miriam became a leper. Where is he called? Ish Moshe. Olav Mikol Adam. Meaning, he's called Ish. What is Ish? Although he is Ish, which is a classification of somebody of distinction, despite that, he's Olav Mikol Adam. So the Ish, who's Ish? Ish is Moshe. So Moshe bowed to his father-in-law. Okay? Bowing to his father-in-law, that also, it shows a level of humility. Here, Moshe today is the king, but he's bowing. And he bows and he kisses him. Why is it important for the Torah tells that he kisses him? I mean, if they had a special relationship, he's the father of his wife and grandfather of his children. Why does Torah have to? So of course, they hadn't seen each other in a year, a little bit over a year. Now he's coming out into the desert, and the Torah tells us Moshe kissed his father-in-law. They had a relationship. They spent years together, and evidently they had a good relationship. Before he left to Egypt, he went to ask permission from his father-in-law to be released from the oath he had taken that he would not leave unless his father-in-law gives him permission. So all that transpired was due to that. So of course they kissed when they saw them. So what's the Torah telling us? They kissed one another. Why is that the Torah telling us this? That's number one. We find that the burning bush, Moshe initially was a little obstinate, and ultimately he was to the point where he crossed the line, where it went beyond humility, and because of that he forfeited the kuna. And it was given to Aaron, his brother. Why was he so obstinate not to accept the role as the goel? Because he was concerned he would offend his older brother, Aaron. That was driving always this reason why he wasn't agreeable to take on the role as the goel, as the redeemer. So what does Hashem say to Moshe? After everything is said and done, V'yotza v'samach b'libo. Your brother, when you go out to meet him in the desert, he will go out v'samach b'libo. Not only will he not be offended, he will have joy in his heart that you were chosen to be the goel. And because of that joy that he had in his heart, that's why Aaron merited to have the choshen on his heart. That because he had such a special heart, he merited to have the choshen, which had the Shem Hashem. It was in the folds of the choshen of the breastplate, and that's why the Shechina would actually illuminate the colored stones of the choshen whenever that was the word of the tomb. The Psalm of Libo. So over there, Torah tells us when they met, they kissed. Aaron kissed Moshe. No, the two brothers. Aaron is special; he's a prophet. Moshe is special. They hadn't seen each other for 60 years. And he understood who Moshe was. He was that miracle child. When he was born, the whole house was filled with light, which was the Shekhinah. And miraculously, he survived the Nile, being put in the box. He fled miraculously. He was not killed. Now he's coming back after all these years. First, tells us they kissed him. It's understood they kissed. What did Torah give us that piece of information they kissed? So there, the Sefarno says, when the Torah says he kissed him, it's Ki'ilu Noshak Sefer Torah. Personally, you have to say he kissed the Sefer Torah. Why did he kiss the Sefer Torah? Because it's holiness. That's why you kiss it. So when Aaron kissed Moshe, it was like kissing the Sefer Torah. That's what the Torah is telling us. How do we know this? Because if the Torah is sharing us that piece of information with us, it's not just brotherly love over here. It goes beyond that. So the Torah says that this kissing is more than just two brothers embracing and kissing one another. Okay? Now, here the Torah tells us that Moshe kissed his father-in-law. So we asked the same question. They had a special relationship. Of course he kissed him. Now, initially, when Yisro had sent the message to Moshe, he says, your father's coming. Either you come out to greet me, and if it's not enough to greet me, come out on behalf of your wife. And if it's not on behalf of your wife, you should come out on behalf of your children. That's why you should greet me. Now, we once discussed, why would Moshe Rabbeinu not come out to greet Yisro? Why not? So we'd explained that since Yisro initially was an idolater, and although he became a Baal Tshuva, he rejected idolatry and became a monotheist, but nevertheless, he's a person giving that kind of person with that kind of background, that kind of recognition, that Moshe Rabbeinu performed all the miracles, he should go and value such a person. Maybe he would have some kind of negative fallout. That's where he'd have hesitancy. What about his wife? Come out on behalf of your wife. His wife is a convert. She doesn't have any special pedigree. Maybe that's another reason why he may not come out for your children. Your children have your pedigree. You're the father of your children. That was the hesitancy. Why he should not come out to greet his father-in-law, his wife, and only for his children. So if you look at Ben Tchuma says that Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you go out and you greet him. Why? Because the only reason why a person is able to have a level of understanding of truth is because I endow him with that level, because he has some kind of merit. So if I value the convert, and that's why he converted, therefore you must go out and acknowledge him. So the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu went out to acknowledge him, because Hashem said, you must go. So whatever his hesitancy was, immediately was dispelled by Hashem saying to him, you must go out. Because that he converted to monotheism, it's because I was involved in the process, and therefore you must value that. So now Moshe Rabbeinu sees Yisro in a different light. It's not only being processed through his own prism, his own lens, it's through Hashem's lens. As a result of that, Vayisheklu. So similar to Aaron kissing Moshe Rabbeinu, Kilu Noshek Sefer Torah, he's kissing a holy object. Yisro is not just the person who became a monotheist. He's a special person. that Hashem went specially to give him this understanding of truth, which brought him over that hump to become the convert. That's number one. Secondly, I mentioned in the past, the Medrash tells us that idolatry is mentioned 48 times in the Torah. And the laws pertaining to a ger is mentioned 48 times in the Torah. Why? Because who is the ger? Who's the convert? He was the pagan, he was the idolater, and he rejected the idolatry, which is represented by 48, to embrace truth, which is 48 times. So this is the corresponding factor. 48 times avodah zarah, idolatry, 48 times ger. That is what it is. That's what it represents. So this is what it's all about. So because that is its value, its innate value, the ger, what he gave up to become that, therefore he's special. And therefore, because of that, vayishak lo, that's why he kissed him. I had mentioned, it says in Pirkei Avos, the memches dvorim shetorah niknus behem. The 48 ways one acquires Torah. In the Mishnah, at the end, in the 6th chapter, Rameir, it goes and it delineates all 48 ways. It's 48 ways. We say Barasi Yitzhar Torah Tavlin. The antidote to idolatry, to the evil inclination, is Torah. What is the ultimate of the Yitzhar? What chas v'shalom? Where could he bring a person? He can bring him to deny God's existence. That's the deity. It's not Hashem. So what do you need to be able to address every level of the Yitzhar, where he could come at you from every level of every angle? He could come at you 48 ways. Therefore, you need the 48 levels of internalization of Torah, and only then are you able to really withstand all the challenges of the evil inclination. So 48 times idolatry is mentioned in Torah. 48 times gerus, convert, is mentioned in Torah. And the memches dvorim haTorah nikspeh. Yisro just show up with his bags at the door, knock on the door, and says, "I'm here." What do you need all this acknowledgement? I'm coming, greet me. What do you need the greeting? Just show up, right? So the Sifrono says over here, the Gemara tells us in Nida that a person, before you enter into a home, you should knock on the door. Why should you knock? Because and the Gemara says not only a third party's home, even your own home. Because if you don't knock and to alert even your wife that you're coming in, she may be doing something on a very personal level, and it causes some level of embarrassment. So you alert her that you're coming, that if she's involved in that kind of situation, she should not be embarrassed. Since the ultimate level of consideration when you alert the person that you're coming into the home. Therefore, you should knock on the door before you come in. Not only a stranger, not only a friend, but even your own wife. You should knock before you come in. And if you don't, Hashem sees that person in a very, very negative light, because it's considered a lack of consideration. So that Yisro was alerting Moshe Rabbeinu that he's coming, it's because you have to inform a person before you come. You don't just drop in. Because if you drop in, the person may feel he's not sufficiently acknowledging you, prepared to receive you. Therefore, it's consideration for Moshe and Klal Yisrael. That's why he's alerting them that he's coming. It's not that he wants honor. He doesn't want honor. The Sivana cites the Gemara Nida. That's the reason why he's alerting Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, so for consideration, I have to tell you I'm coming. But factually, by telling you that, it may create a problem, because that means you're going to have to somehow display the appropriate respect because of who I am. I'm your father-in-law. But it may be a problem. But if not for that, what about your wife? What about your children? But that's how it follows. So he's not doing it for his own honor.
So this is the second Torah principle we learned from Yisro, that you need to apprise somebody before you enter their home, and the other one being
it's based on what, correct. Like everybody has to apprise the person before you enter. for the sake of consideration for that person, identity, that's what Yisro is doing over here. Right, say the motzi. So usually the one who, if the head of the household has the lechem mishneh, right, the 2 loaves of bread, he says the motzi, and he's motzi, he covers everyone who's at the table. Where he doesn't distribute 2 challahs for each person. So the question is, when you say the motzi, you say bershus. You're asking permission from the guests to be motzi them in the motzi. Do you say bershus? Don't, because there's a question of the hefsek. You're not, after you say the altish, they're not supposed to speak. So if you're not supposed to speak, you're not permitted to say bershus, because if you're the host and they're the guests, you have to ask permission. It's you if they're eating your food, right? A third party, we understand it's appropriate to say bershus. Let's say the head of household says al-arni, would say in the moment, he says bershus with permission of the head of the household, or others where you're not in your abdi motzi, but if he's the head of the household, so what does he have to ask permission to be most of them in the motzi? So that Rav Chaim Volozhin writes, for the sake of humility, even though the host, you should say hamotzi. It's appropriate behavior. It's appropriate to say bershus. Therefore, it's not considered a hefsek. Even if you say, even though you're the host and they're eating your food, so you're walking into your own house. It's not humility here, it's consideration. Consideration for others. They may be doing things in the house. The head of the house who walks in, or anybody who walks in, they should be alerted that you're coming in.
Very good to know.
Yisro heard, what did he hear? So Rashi cited Chazal. Here are 2 things. Krias Yam Suf, Amalek. So we had difficulty, what exactly was so impressive about Amalek? We discussed this. But again, how do we see Amalek was that special event that he should be touched and impressed with that? So take a look at this pasuk here. He had told him over all that Hashem had done to Paro and Mitzrayim. It's interesting. What did he do to Paro and Mitzrayim? All that he done to Egypt with Paro. So again, when we read the Makos, many of them started with Paro, because since he's the one who initiated them, so he was the first victim of the Makkah. So the Pharaoh or the Mitzrayim, and despite he was a deity, it meant nothing. Pharaoh was no different than the average Egyptian. Al Odos Yisrael is very important. When he told him over, why did God do all this? Al Odos Yisrael, for the sake of the Jewish people. Look, if the Egyptians had to be punished, in one moment he could have totally vanquished them. But why did it have to go through the pattern of the Makos? Because the Jews had to experience and be exposed to a level of revelation, as we discussed, that every Makkah, every plague represented another display of Hashem's omnipotence to expunge the influence of the idolatry of Egypt. So why did God do all this? Oh, this is Yisro, for the sake of the Jewish people. It's called Atla Hashem Etzosam, and all the Tlo, all the I don't know, how does he explain the word Tlo? What has he to do with Tlo? The misfortune which came upon us, Baderech, on the way, Vayitzelim Hashem. And despite that, the extreme level of misfortune, Hashem saved us. Take a look in Rashi. What's Tlo? It's called Tlo, Shalayav Shel Amalek. All the Tlo. Aksa, the angst. It's interesting. Aksa in Aramaic, Tlo is Aksa, angst. All the angst we experienced on the way, and Hashem saved us. So what did he share with? It's very interesting. We said the Jews, they witnessed at the sea, according to one opinion, even 250 miracles. Did he share the 250 miracles? We say this is law. What he saved us. What is that? Firstly, the sea initially did not split. We were between the sea and the Egyptian army. And that's the law. We thought the end was coming. And despite that, what did Hashem say? Just travel. So that's the law. Even after the sea closed on the Egyptians, what did Hashem say? The Jews were concerned that maybe the Egyptians were not drowned in the sea. They were coming around the other side. So they were concerned. So Hashem had the sea spit out the Egyptians, the remains of the Egyptians on the seashore. So what did that do? It allayed that fear, or that worry that the masters were still alive. The Sefarno says over there, regarding the four expressions of Gula, the Go'alti. What's Go'alti? So he says over there that a slave, until he knows his master is no longer alive, psychologically he doesn't feel free. It's only when he sees he's no longer in existence, now he feels free. He could sleep at night. So only when they saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore, that was the Go'alti. Go'alti was when they saw the remains of the Egyptians. So until then, they were experiencing angst. Wasn't simple. When the sea split, that was terrific. So when they were confronted between the sea and the Egyptian army, that's Tlo. Until they saw the remains of the Egyptians, it's Tlo. But what does he say? What was the other Tlo? Shalom Amalek. He saved us from that. What do you mean he saved us from Amalek? We're talking about a nomad band of people. We were millions of people. Was there a match between us? It's Amalek. You'd say numbers make a difference. When it comes to Amalek, Rashi says over there that Amalek, they were experts in sorcery. So the Jews who went to war against Amalek with Yeshua, they had to address all those issues. It wasn't so simple. It wasn't simple to defeat the Amalekites. Therefore, it says, Vayetzileim Hashem, we were saved. We were saved at the Yam Suf, that the sea split. When the Egyptians were thrown onto the seashore, seeing their remains, we were saved. That was part of the saving. Once it was split and we saw the miracles, that's not the Atzile. So it's the beginning and the end, and what? And Amalek is Vayetzile. You say, what do you mean? It's a skirmish, it's nothing. Vayetzile. He's going to quantify that Amalek, and now it's interesting. Yisro wasn't an ordinary person. Yisro was one of the advisors to Paro. Yisro understood what Egypt was all about. Yitzhak understood what it means to be in that environment for all these years, how you can be affected negatively, and to come out as if you were never there, unscathed. And that's Kiyotze Hashem Mitzrayim. The greatest of the accomplishments, we left Egypt. It's as if whatever negative influence was upon us, it was all extracted from us. It was expunged from us. Miraculous. Humanly, it's something not possible. You know what this is similar to? We find that Yosef called his first son Menashe. Why did he call his first son Menashe? What's the base of the name? Ki Dashani Elokim is called Amoli Beisovi. God caused me to forget all the strife and all the suffering, all the trauma of my father's household, and everything that had to do with that period of time. It's like he had amnesia, like he never experienced it. Why did he name his son that name? So we explained, Yosef understood that he was meant to be the provider and prepare for the exile, which the Jews were going to be there for 210 years. After Yosef went through with his brothers, the way they traumatized him, the way they tortured him, emotionally, mentally, and physically, the way he was abused, how could he be fully dedicated to them? A miracle happened. All of a sudden, Hashem caused him to forget the trauma, all that. It dissipated in the moment. It's as if he never experienced it. Menashe being the firstborn, as we said, which is the most favorite, He represents that miracle, meaning now's the time to begin to behave, to act as what? As the provider, to begin preparing for the Golus. That's why he named him Menashe. And this was before the famine started in Egypt. But he understood, when I put away the food and store it, and all this, what is the concept? It's interesting. People believe, and Shlomo speaks about it in Mishlei and in Koheles. People build fortunes, and they believe it's for themselves, but ultimately, it's for someone else to take. There's a Maral on Purim, on the Megillah. He says that the two wealthiest commoners in the history of the world was Korach and Haman. The wealthiest commoners who ever lived. And Haman, he would display on his chest all his assets. He would walk around with all his assets recorded on his chest. That's how pompous he was about who he was. The wealthiest commoner among the Gentiles who ever lived. What does the Megillah tell us? That after Haman was hanged, Hashem took his home and he gave it over to what? To Esther, and Esther gave it to Mordechai. So all that Haman had amassed during his lifetime, the honor, his mansion, his house, with all its amenities, he was preparing all that. Ultimately, the Mordechai should take that over. Mordechai became the viceroy of the Persian Empire. But he just shifted into position. He built that over years. He cultivated it. Haman. But who is he cultivating that position and everything? That when it's time for Mordechai to move in, he's moving right into that. Pharaoh, Yosef gathered the wealth of the world to Egypt. And what did the Egyptians believe? All that's theirs. It's for them. They don't realize. Because there was the common between the parts. Hashem says, they're going to leave a great wealth. And the Gemara says, there wasn't a shred of wealth left. They took out everything out of Egypt. So all they were amassing all those years were really for Klal Yisrael. For the that's what it's about. But what did the Egyptians believe? So Yosef already, when he had this amnesia, he understood what he has to do. He sells the grain, how he sells the grain, how he stores the wealth away. All this is being stored for who? For Klal Yisrael. Everything's for Klal Yisrael. He has to prepare for the Golus. And preparation for the Golus means you have to prepare even for the conclusion of the Golus, because ultimately it's Achten Yisro B'chush Golus. They always debate the Roman governor of Yerushalayim. His name was Thomas Trump, and eventually he had him put to death. He put Reb Kiva to death. So, and they would get into these theological debates. And Reb Kiva said to this Roman guy, he says, I had a dream last night. I have two dogs. One's name is Rufus, and the male and the girl and the female dog is called Rafina. And that was his name and his wife's name. He became livid. What do you have? The audacity. Here I'm this person who could put you to death and you go and you name your dog after me and my wife. The male is me and Rufus or Rafina. He says, I want to ask you a question. You have stone idol, wooden idol, plaster idol, and you call that idol your God. That's not the same thing. Here, the creator of the world, you go call the idol, whatever it is. So why is naming my dog any different after you or your wife any less than that? That you don't see as a disrespect. But this is a disrespect. Okay, Rufus or Rafina. After he hears all that Moshe Rabbeinu firsthand experience, shares it with him. All the good that he had done, he rejoiced over all the good that he had done on behalf of the Jewish people, Asher Yitzilo ben Mitzrayim, that he saved them from the Egyptians, from the hands of the Egyptians. The famous Chazal, Vayichad, first it should say Vayismach, right? Yichad. Vayismach, Zeb Medrash Agodah, Nasib so Chedudim, Meitzah Ibud Mitzrayim. Even though he was happy, but simultaneously he was pained for the destruction of the Egyptian people. Quotes the Gemara Sanhedrin. A convert, there's a certain sensitivity because of his background. You should not speak pejoratively about a convert, a Gentile in his presence for 10 generations, up to 10 generations. Because that's his pedigree. That's where he comes from. Vayichad, although he rejoiced, but the Torah uses a term, simultaneously he was pained that the Egyptian people had to be destroyed because they were his what? They were his peer. That was his peer group. Therefore, you have to be careful. You know, it's interesting. I'm not going to record this.